asking 911.
Yes. My name's Wayne Milam, and my daughter, I just found her dead.
How old's your daughter?
13 months.
13 months old? Okay, let me connect you with the ambulance service, okay? Ma'am, we're going to try CPR anyway, okay? Get her to the phone now.
51 minutes.
26 seconds.
Get her. Wayne, get her, hurry. Are you there? Yes. Y'all stalling is not helping her at all. Go ahead. If he's not going to do it, you put the phone down and go get that baby and get her to the phone.
She was beautiful. We wasn't walking yet, but she was beautiful. Her first words were daddy.
That was the chilling 911 call made on December 2nd, 2008, from a small trailer home in Tatum, Texas. The voice on the phone belonged to Blaine Milam, calm, almost too calm, reporting that his 13-month-old daughter had just died. But what the paramedics found wasn't just a tragic accident. They found a child whose tiny body was covered in bite marks, whose bones were shattered, whose life had been taken not in a moment, but over the course of 30 hours of unimaginable torment. Her name was Amora Carson. She never learned to walk. She barely had time to speak, but the horror she endured would haunt a nation and expose the catastrophic failures of a system meant to protect her. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that tore through the heart of Texas. A case so disturbing that even seasoned investigators broke down in tears. A case wrapped in drug use, religious delusion, and unchecked violence. And at the center of it all, a helpless baby girl caught in a nightmare no child should ever know. This is the story of Amora Carson. Her name was Amora Carson. Born on November 12, 2007 at Longview Regional Medical Center in Texas. A name that meant love in several languages. And that was exactly what she radiated, love. She was just 13 months old, still too young to walk, still babbling in that precious way toddlers do when language is still a game. Her first word, whispered with pride, was "Daddy." Those who saw her described a beautiful baby girl with big brown eyes, soft curls, and a laugh that could light up a room. She almost never cried, always smiling, calm even in unfamiliar arms. She adored her plush teddy bear, loved listening to lullabies, and was happiest when wrapped in her mother's arms. To the outside world, Amora was a picture of innocence, clean, healthy, adored. Her mother, Jessica Carson, only 17 at the time, seemed to be doing her very best. She dressed Amora in clean clothes, kept her well fed and rested. There were no visible signs of danger. But children like Amora don't always get warnings. They don't always get second chances. They love without knowing who is safe and who is not. Amora never learned how cruel the world could be until it was far too late. She had just celebrated her first birthday 3 weeks before the night she was taken from this world. And yet, for the short time she was here, she loved. And was loved. But love isn't always enough when the people meant to protect you are the very ones who become your monsters. To understand how something so terrible could happen to someone so pure, we need to look deeper. Into the world Amora was born into. Jessica Carson was only 17 when she became a mother. A high school student in Texas grieving the sudden loss of her father, who had taken his own life when she was just 11. Jessica was the one who found him. That moment, as anyone could guess, changed her forever. But she never received help. No therapy, no intervention, just silence, and a haunted child learning to live with ghosts. In the years that followed, Jessica began seeing things, spirits, shadows, voices no one else could hear. Her family dismissed it as teenage imagination. But what they missed was a warning sign, a mind quietly unraveling. When Amora was born, Jessica poured herself into motherhood. Friends said she was nurturing, loving. But isolation crept in. and so did loneliness. That's when Blaine entered the picture. Blaine Keith Milam, 18 years old, met Jessica online in early 2008. Their connection was instant. Within months, they were inseparable. To outsiders, Blaine seemed kind. He played with Amora, bought her gifts, called her his little girl. But there were dark chapters Blaine never revealed, or rather Jessica chose to ignore. In 2007, he had been arrested for a disturbing crime involving an 11-year-old neighbor. He had broken into her home, left explicit messages, and stole her underwear. He was convicted of criminal solicitation of a minor and sentenced to jail. Yet due to prison overcrowding, Blaine served his time in a work release program and then simply vanished from the system. By the time he reappeared, he was engaged to Jessica. She knew about his conviction. She had even attended the sentencing. But she stayed. She moved in with him that summer, and almost immediately people noticed something had changed. Jessica, once neat and bright-eyed, grew pale and withdrawn. She stopped showering, stopped smiling. Her best friend later said her eyes looked hollow, like something inside her had died. Blaine was taking control of everything. He dictated who Jessica could talk to, where she could go. He took her phone, her passwords, isolated her from family, from friends. By the fall, she barely left the trailer where they lived. Then came a tragic windfall. Jessica turned 18 and received $25,000 from a trust fund set up after her father's death. With it, the couple moved into a trailer owned by Blaine's mother in Tatum, Texas. A new home, but no fresh start. Their descent was accelerating, fueled by grief, meth, and Blaine's obsession with death and the supernatural. He believed he could speak to the dead. Jessica believed him. Together they opened a Ouija board, and from that moment on, reality broke apart. What happened next was no longer a love story. It was a delusion spiraling into horror. It began as a hallucination and ended in one of the most horrific crimes Texas has ever seen. By late November 2008, Blaine Milam had fully embraced the idea that he was a prophet. He believed God spoke to him directly. He claimed demons were real, and that one of them had entered Amora. Jessica, already unwell, didn't question him. After a Ouija board session convinced her that her own mother had murdered her father, Jessica descended into paranoia. She believed spirits surrounded their trailer, and that her baby was no longer just a baby. On December 1st, Blaine told Jessica that he had received a revelation. Amora was possessed. He claimed to have seen her walking and running at inhuman speed, despite being only 13 months old and unable to walk on her own. Jessica's reply was chilling. Can't we perform an exorcism to get rid of this? That question would set into motion 30 hours of unimaginable suffering. Jessica turned on the TV and waited. Blaine took Amora into the back room. He locked the door, and he didn't come out for a long time. From that point on, the trailer became a torture chamber. Screams filled the home, screams that Jessica heard. But she did nothing. Worse, when Blaine emerged complaining of exhaustion, Jessica encouraged him to continue. Blaine claimed the toddler was biting him, hitting herself with a hammer, running wild. He even showed Jessica a photograph of Amora's distorted face, saying it was proof of demonic possession. But the reality was beyond human comprehension. When the forensic team later examined Amora's body, they found 24 bite marks from her toes to her face, multiple skull fractures like shattered puzzle pieces, spiral fractures in her limbs caused by twisting, 18 broken ribs, a crushed sternum, torn liver, damage to the tongue, signs of strangulation. And most devastating of all, sexual trauma so severe that her anatomy was permanently destroyed. The coroner would later say, "Shocking is the only word that comes to mind." Amora survived much of the torture. Many of the injuries were fatal on their own, but they kept going. On the morning of December 2nd, Blaine said he couldn't continue. Jessica and Blaine drove to a pawn shop to sell tools for money to hire a real exorcist. They left Amora, bloodied and dying, in her car seat. Security footage showed them laughing, speaking casually. The money they got was barely enough for a pack of cigarettes. They returned home. Amora died shortly after, but even then the cruelty did not end. Her body was hidden under a bathroom floor. The call to 911 was delayed for hours. When paramedics finally arrived, they were stunned into silence. Amora's body was already in rigor mortis, her face one massive bruise, her body marked with circular impressions, later confirmed to be human bite marks. The horror was now public, but the question remained: what would the justice system do now? When Sergeant Kevin Roy entered the trailer on the morning of December 2nd, 2008, he stopped cold at the doorway. Paramedics stood frozen. No one dared touch the body. There on the bedroom floor lay Amora Carson, lifeless, broken. Her skin was mottled with bruises and bite marks. Her eyes closed forever. The officers had seen death before, but not like this. And then came Blaine and Jessica, kneeling by the body, pretending to cry. When Blaine was questioned, he seemed unusually composed. He claimed they had gone to meet a man named Clark to clear land, and when they returned, they found Amora dead in a hole in the bathroom floor. But his story didn't add up. Texas Ranger Kenny Ray sat down with Blaine and listened carefully. The story shifted mid-sentence. First, Blaine said Amora was breathing. Then he said she wasn't. Then he said Jessica called 911 before they found her. Then after, the contradictions piled up, and Jessica, she told a completely different tale. At first she cried, but soon her words turned cold. She began referring to Amora as that baby. She spoke of possession, of exorcism. She even admitted to putting crushed sleeping pills into Amora's bottle. The investigators were horrified, not just by what had happened, but by the detachment in Jessica's voice. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed the couple pawning tools while Amora lay dying in the car. DNA confirmed Amora's blood on items inside the trailer. A hidden pipe wrench was recovered from beneath the house, coated with lubricant, confirming the worst suspicions. Forensic odontologists matched 8 of the bite marks directly to Blaine, but the final blow came from Blaine himself. In January 2009, a jail nurse reported that Blaine had called her weeping. "I did it," he said. "But Miss Shirley, the Blaine you know didn't do this. My daddy told me to be a man." He asked her to tell Jessica that he loved her. That confession would seal his fate. Blaine Millam was charged with capital murder. Due to overwhelming public interest, the trial was moved to Montgomery County to ensure fairness. The prosecution laid out the evidence in chilling detail: photos, testimonies, DNA, bite marks, and Blaine's own words. His defense claimed intellectual disability, pointing to an IQ of around 70, his childlike behavior, and obsession with cartoons. But the jury didn't waver. On May 17, 2010, Blaine was found guilty of capital murder. 10 days later, he was sentenced to death. He was just 20 years old. Jessica's trial came the following year. Prosecutors argued that while Blaine delivered the fatal blows, Jessica aided and encouraged it. That she heard the screams, that she gave the sleeping pills, that she chose not to stop it. Her defense claimed domestic abuse, trauma, manipulation. They said Blaine brainwashed her, that she was a victim too. But the jury saw it differently. On April 13, 2011, Jessica Carson was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The justice system had delivered its verdict, but the public was not done speaking. The trial of Blaine Millam and Jessica Carson sent shockwaves through Texas and far beyond. Media coverage was relentless. Front pages carried Amora's photo, a baby's bright eyes, now symbolic of an innocence stolen in the most brutal way. News anchors struggled to describe the details without breaking down. Across the state, people asked the same question: how could this have happened? Social media exploded with outrage. Thousands signed petitions demanding harsher penalties for child abusers. Others called for an overhaul of the probation and work release system that had allowed Blaine to disappear unnoticed, despite his criminal record and a court order to stay away from children. In vigils held across small towns in Texas, strangers gathered to mourn a child they had never met. Stuffed animals and handwritten notes piled beneath trees. Candles were lit in memory of a little girl who never got the chance to speak in full sentences. One of the most heartbreaking responses came from Amora's biological father, Arland Mutina. He had been serving in the military overseas when she died. He never got to hear her say "Daddy." He returned home to bury his daughter. The justice system, though swift in this case, was not spared criticism. Many asked, why hadn't the state tracked Blaine after he abandoned his work release? Why did no one intervene when Jessica showed clear signs of mental decline? How did so many red flags go unseen? In 2019, public attention returned to the case when news broke that Blaine Milam had found a pen pal, a nurse in the UK, who defended her decision to correspond with him despite knowing what he had done. That revelation reopened old wounds. It reminded everyone how often evil disguises itself as misunderstood. Meanwhile, advocates and child protection groups used Amora's name as a rallying cry. The phrase "Justice for Amora" appeared on banners, t-shirts, and websites. Educational campaigns warned of the dangers of unchecked mental illness, spiritual delusions, and domestic abuse. One group, formed by survivors of abuse, lobbied for mandatory welfare checks when minors live with known sex offenders. They cited Amora's story as proof that current safeguards weren't enough. But perhaps the loudest message came not from lawyers or journalists, but from the everyday people who kept asking, why didn't someone speak up sooner? Because sometimes all it takes is one voice to change a fate, but no one spoke. And now, Amora was gone. What would you do if a child near you seemed withdrawn? If a mother you knew stopped smiling, stopped bathing, and stopped asking for help? If a baby you once saw in the park simply disappeared? Would you notice? Would you ask? Would you speak? Because the story of Amora Carson is not just a crime. It is a cry for awareness, for compassion, for intervention. Amora lived only 13 months. She never spoke in full sentences, never had her first Christmas, never learned how to walk. She died without understanding why. And yet, the impact of her death continues to echo. Today, Blaine Milam remains on death row. His execution postponed multiple times as debates rage over bite mark science and intellectual disability laws. He is now 35, having spent nearly half his life waiting for death. Jessica Carson, now 33, is serving life without parole at the Crane Unit in Gatesville, Texas, a prison known for housing the state's most violent female offenders. But justice alone cannot answer the most haunting questions. Why did no one stop them? How did every safety net fail? Amora's grave lies in Rosewood Park Cemetery, marked with a heart-shaped plaque bearing only 2 dates. November 12, 2007, December 2, 2008, just over a year. That's all she had. But her story must not be forgotten. If one person, just one, had reported the signs, spoken out, knocked on a door, picked up the phone, Amora might be alive today. So I leave you with this. If you suspect something, say something. If you see signs of abuse, isolation, or strange behavior, don't wait. One voice can save a life. Let Amora's story be that voice echoing across time. Thank you for watching this episode of Crime Line. If this story moved you, please share it, because truth must be known and silence is never an option when a child is in danger. We'll see you in the next episode as we continue to speak for those who no longer can.